and welcome to episode 24 of The Best Games, period. I'm your co-host, Jack Gardner, and with me, as always, are the ever-trusty Jeremy Brown and Daniel Jones. Say hello, fellas.
Hello, fellas.
And this week we are going to be talking about the classic game Tetris. We promised that we were going to talk about it this week, and we are going to deliver. But first, just how are you guys doing? How are you, Jeremy? How are you, Daniel? I heard you had some dalliances this past week with each other.
So I have to Google dalliance with that word now?
Yep.
I don't know, that sounds a little dirty. We didn't do anything unseemly.
I mean, didn't we? Wait.
Well, not together, anyway.
I mean, I heard some stories.
There were no stories, actually. This is a pretty chill week. But yes, I flew to Connecticut and visited Daniel for his birthday and his lovely wife and beautiful daughter. And met his mostly not insane, crazy coworkers. Actually, the coworkers were fine. There was one dude.
Coworkers were fine.
that was married to one that was a little bit out there, but he's cool. I met an awesome guy that I know vaguely from Twitter and Meet Tomo named Joe. And we pretty much just hung out, played some video games, ate some food, and went to a few historical sites, and I tried my best not to stink up the bathroom too much. Good times.
Well, yeah, the first thing we did was go to the store to buy spray for the bathroom. And I should have taken that as a sign.
If you don't know yourself, who do you know?
It was, hey, I mean, whatever. It was good planning.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, hopefully I wasn't too much of a burden. Hopefully the wife didn't hate me when I left. And
No, not at all. No. You cooked us that really good, delicious dinner.
Yeah, I was there for, 5 days, and I cooked one time. Woohoo!
Well, there's always that thing. It's hard to tell with you if you want to cook things or if it's a burden on you.
Yeah,
so
no,
I'm sure
that.
Daniel didn't want to impose on your cooking prowess.
I probably wouldn't have minded cooking, another time or two, but no, it was cool.
Well, yeah, honestly, that was the thing. I didn't want you to just feel like you had to cook for us the whole time. I didn't feel right just asking you to do that too much. So
well, you didn't
the one
ask
night
me,
was fine.
But, yeah. No, yeah. It was a good time. It was my first trip to the East Coast.
Did you see the ocean?
Well, no.
Not really.
Oh.
He saw
I've seen
salt
oceans
water
before.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Yeah, exactly. We stuck to the rivers and the lakes that we were used to.
That's right.
No, I saw some cool things. I saw some cool things that I saw on TV, on Mysteries at the Monument and Mysteries at the Museum. Which
yeah, Jack, did you
totally
know...
blew my mind because I'm totally into that kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, I saw Don Wildman talking about this.
Well, you probably know the history of my little town that I grew up in better than I do now at this point, Jeremy. So
there's a good chance, yes.
Educate us a little bit on Lebanon, Connecticut.
Well, Lebanon has the Lebanon Greens, which is where General Lafayette camped out while he was stalling for time for the French to get there so that they could kick Cornwallis's ass, and it worked. And to this day, it's still just a protected area, but so they let the grass grow there, from spring until fall, and then farmers or whatever can just come and bring their goats there and eat the grass, or harvest the grass, or do whatever they need to do to the grass, and you just don't see that kind of stuff. But most
I don't think they bring goats. I don't think I've ever seen a goat on the green.
Well, how do they get the grass?
They bale the hay. They bale it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And then they bring it wherever they bring it. Yeah, it is harvested. But just not by goats.
Here's the thing. When we were driving by there, so we ordered some pizza and we were stalling for time. And Connecticut is weird. You can go through the town Daniel lives in, and you'll be on one block and see a new city sign all of a sudden, be on another block and see another city sign. The borders there are just messed up. They literally are, weird. So, we're driving, and...
The town is shaped like a diamond. So you'll drive through one corner and it'll take you 10 seconds.
I guess that's a good way to put it. So we're just driving and like they're both kind of making fun of this big old stretch of green area and they're like, it's Lebanon greens. And we pull into it and his mom and dad are there like unexpectedly. And his dad starts telling me the history of it and I'm just like enthralled and I'm like, no way. Like I thought it was totally cool and like there's this little walkway there and it's mostly straight and then it has this really weird like S curve in it. And I'm like, what's that all about? And he's like, well, there's a French oven buried there. So when they were putting the walkway in, which apparently took like 60 years to get approved because this place is so sacred to the town of Lebanon.
Yep.
And like this woman that lives in a house across the street, which is also a museum, apparently.
Yes.
Came running out and was like, you cannot build/dig there because there's a French oven buried there. So they literally went around it, and that's why it's curved like that.
But a French oven.
I'm guessing Dutch oven. I don't know, but
why not dig it out and move it somewhere else?
Because it probably would be
for the same reason why they make them build around it. Because it's historical. I mean,
and it might also be historical.
The people in that area care about that space very much, and that's clear.
But it's still underground.
But it's still there. I guess that's the point. I don't know.
Right, but it seems like if you know that there's like something valuable there, you wouldn't even have to move it, but just like after the road's built, dig it up a little bit so that people can come see it.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides, I guess.
Both sides of the road?
Yeah. No, both sides of leaving it just the way it is and both sides of excavating it. But other than that...
For a while, there was a prank that somebody did where they put up a pretty, like, legit-looking sign that said, coming soon, McDonald's, right next to that museum.
I bet that made some of those folks angry.
That didn't go over well.
But, like, just in that whole, like, 2-mile stretch, maybe, there were all kinds of amazing things, like the Civil War doctor that first studied, intestines and whatnot.
Oh.
Was from there. I think his name is Beauchamp, if I'm not mistaken.
Beauchamp.
Well, his last name.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, while we were there, like, there was, like, these 3 teenage girls taking selfies. Like, nonstop in front of the tree, not far from the French oven.
Well, that's the funny thing, is that, like, growing up there, I'm interested in history. I like history, and I pay a lot of attention to history. But national history and world history. So when you live in a place, you just take it for granted, and you don't think about, how historic it actually is.
Yeah, you get used to it. Kind of like growing up in Black Hills. I mean, Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse are not that big of a deal to me.
Yeah.
But to other people, they are. So, yeah, I understand that concept.
So, it was fun, though. Yeah. I think you had a good time.
I did.
What about you, Jack? What have you been up to?
A lot of my last week was just kind of prepping for the weekend, and over the weekend, I was at a local Minneapolis event called GlitchCon.
Oh,
yeah.
I was representing Extra Life. It's kind of more of a developer convention.
So Bethesda's highly represented, I presume?
Not really, but it's a lot more indie developers. I think probably the biggest name there was a guy who made Job Simulator, if you have heard that before.
Yeah.
It's kind of a...
It's not out yet,
no.
Right? It's still coming to VR.
Yeah.
If you simulated my job, it would be like the Dark Souls of job simulators.
I bet. Basically, what all that entailed was I sat at a booth for all of, 12, 13 hours for 2 days, and talked with people, got them to sign up for Extra Life, told them what it was, all that good stuff.
Nice.
And then afterwards, I went to a little kind of get-together with people who were there, and it was very nice. It was a lot of people there that I knew from the internet world, but they were super nice, super welcoming. We had a really good time.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think that...
Yeah, I saw some good pictures.
Yeah.
From it. Seemed like there were a lot of Game Informer readers there.
Yeah.
Because they're based out of Minneapolis.
It's kind of the unofficial Game Informer convention-ish place. Like,
yeah.
A lot of people go there who are Game Informer fans, and they get to meet the editors and kind of hang out, tour the offices, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really great. Everyone was just very kind and nice. Definitely looking forward to doing it again next year.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you went.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
What?
Hey, guys.
Hey, what?
What?
May the 4th be with you.
Oh, I forgot. I was going to say that in the intro. Oh, no.
Oh.
I'm the worst.
I beat you to it.
There are a few
We
things...
also watched Star Wars.
Oh, you did?
Oh,
while Jeremy was here.
Yeah.
Episode
Yeah.
7?
Yeah.
Yep.
Had you seen that before?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
How'd you like it?
It was good. I mean, I'm not a Star Wars fanatic, but it was good.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's entertaining.
Like, even if it would have been just a single movie, not in the Star Wars universe, it would have been a good movie.
Yeah, it would have been a good movie. But it wasn't. Oh, what a twist in the conversation.
Right?
So, Tetris. Should we talk about Tetris?
Should we block some time out for that?
How are we going to fill an entire episode about Tetris, guys?
Well, you see, the points
Not
that
with
we have to make
gameplay, but with history.
about Tetris will just start flowing from our brains, and they'll just come down. They'll follow gravity, and
See,
they're different.
Right.
Here's
There's
the thing,
different
Daniel.
points.
You've
They
been
come in
pretty
different
funny today.
shapes and sizes.
Sometimes you got to quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, no, I can't do it again. I can't do it again.
Well, okay, so everyone really knows what Tetris is. It's that game with the falling blocks.
Does everyone know? Because Tetris hasn't been as big anymore in the last few years. I don't think that like the new generation knows Tetris like we know Tetris.
I think you're
they
wrong.
do. Tetris is on like everything, Daniel. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's on everything,
Like
but
calculators?
there's not that drive to play Tetris. Like,
well,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I mean, like there are more complicated stuff, but that's kind of the beauty of Tetris is its simplicity and the way that you can play it literally anywhere. Like that was the big draw that made it a success in the first place.
Yeah, the
all right. Well, I agree.
Do you?
list of developers and publishers and platforms it's been released on is longer than something that could be clever, but I can't come up with anything.
I think everyone does know Tetris. It's one of those games that's just ubiquitous. Like everyone, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
The rules are really simple and straightforward. You put a bunch of blocks in a line, and then the line disappears, and then you do it again, and you do it again and again and again. If you make a mistake, you have to build on the ruins of your mistake and try and get it low, and eventually you lose. It's inevitable.
It's true. When was the first time you guys played Tetris?
Game Boy Advance. Or Game
Okay.
Boy, I mean.
Game Boy, first original Game Boy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Jack?
gonna say I played it on the Super Nintendo. I played Tetris 2. It was on the Super Nintendo.
There was a sequel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm gonna say that was the first time, but I'm guessing that there was probably a time before that I just can't remember in my younger days on like the NES or something like that.
Yeah.
Because again, it's been on everything, so I'm gonna guess that wasn't my first time on the Tetris rodeo.
For me, it was Game Boy also.
Okay.
The OG Game Boy.
That was the big one. That was the one that kind of made it
Yeah.
a household.
Yeah, the one that sucked down the batteries like insanely fast.
Yeah,
Those
how
are
many?
the Angry Birds of its time.
many
It just
batteries
sucked the
did that thing
batteries out
take?
of it.
Was
I think
like
it took
four?
four double
Four.
A's,
Yeah.
and it lasted maybe an hour. Maybe?
No, the Game Boy lasted for like, I thought it was like 4 hours or something.
Oh, my bad. That's so great.
No, actually, really, like the Game Boy might have lasted for like 10 hours because I remember the game, what was the Sega one?
The
Game
Game
Gear.
Gear, yeah.
Yeah.
The Game Gear lasted for like half an hour, so it was absurd.
But that was color.
Yeah, there was color to it, but that didn't make it better. The battery life on the Game Gear was
I'm not
a
dissing
joke.
the Game Boy. The Game Boy was awesome, but
And speaking of the Game Boy, I think this is the first game that we've talked about that was on the original Game Boy.
I think it's the first portable game.
Well,
too.
I mean, Super Mario Brothers 3 has been on portable stuff, and
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
We've talked about games that have been on portable systems and all that jazz.
True.
But to be clear, it didn't debut on the Game Boy. That's just where
it did not.
Our first experience with it.
But it did debut on Nintendo systems on the Game Boy.
In America.
No. It was actually on the NES about a year and a half before it was on the Game Boy.
Was it? I thought they both launched at around the same time.
Yeah, no, it came out on the NES before it came out on the Game Boy.
about a year and a half.
Okay.
It did, yeah.
I can be wrong about things. It's
but
okay.
nobody cared until it came on the Game Boy, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, hey, there's this game on the NES also.
Right, because...
I'll be honest, I think we had it on the NES and we never played it, and then we got it on the Game Boy and played it constantly.
Well, I mean, it was the novelty of being able to take it with you, right? Like, what...
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, you had it on the Game Boy, Daniel.
Well,
what was the attraction?
Nothing else was on the Game Boy at that point. Really.
Oh, yeah,
there was that Mario thing.
Mario Land.
Yeah, but it was just... And it was a cool... I'm sorry, this is your question, Daniel. I'll stop.
No, it's okay. No.
It was... it was more fit for a mobile application. You could take it with you and, you could just twist the angles and change the shapes, and it fit really well with the Game Boy. So I think that's why it really caught on after that point. Because it released on a dozen things before then, including the Famicom NES. And it just really... I don't know. It was cool.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it helped that you could take it on the road. But actually, I'm going to tell the story now. My dad played Tetris more than anybody in our family.
Really?
Yeah. The man does not play video games very much at all.
What?
I got him to play...
He might play No Man's Sky.
He might. He was... Yeah, Jeremy saw me, just an aside, Jeremy saw me convince my brother and nephew to get a PS4 over an Xbox One. I'm not a fanboy or anything.
A little bit of a fanboy.
A little bit.
That was pretty fanboyish. I was there in person. I'm just saying.
I just wanted them to be able to experience No Man's Sky because I think that they would both get a kick out of it. And so I showed them the Colbert segment where Sean Murray was on there. And my dad was just, he was enraptured with it, right, Jeremy? I mean, he was just so interested.
To the point he shushed a kid.
Yeah, he did. My other nephew was talking during it, and he was like, Jackson, we're listening to this. We're watching this. I was like, okay, well, all right then.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's my dad.
Can you do more impressions of your dad? Just going forward?
All right now. I will just bust it out at some point.
Yeah. And your mom. Meeting your mom totally was like amazing, especially since she did those couple things on the show, the old show.
The old show, yeah.
Yeah, on our old show, cool. she read some
scripts.
She read some famous video game
quotes,
monologues, dialogues, whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
that was good times. So anyway, we played a few games growing up, but for the most part, he was not a gamer.
Yeah.
And we got the Game Boy, and Tetris came with it, and nobody else got to play freaking Tetris because he was playing it all the time. At one point, we had to basically cancel Thanksgiving because he wouldn't stop playing.
What?
We were supposed to go to my aunt and uncle's for Thanksgiving. And my dad was playing Tetris on the couch. And he was in the middle of a really good run. And he would play that game. He would sit and play that game until he saw the credits roll and heard the little Russian music.
Wait, there were credits in Tetris?
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember.
On the Game Boy version, there were credits and Russian music played, and there was, yeah.
I know that...
I saw them multiple times because he would always get there.
Like, the music is iconic, but when did the credits run?
I don't know how it worked. I really couldn't tell you. I was young, and I don't remember.
Huh.
I was
if you were
7
good
or 8
enough,
when he was
eventually they
doing
just
that
did, because
You
the
reached
stages
the end?
would end. Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Similar
you
to
just,
Donkey Kong, in a way?
Huh.
Yes. Well,
I can just imagine that
Donkey Kong just
conversation,
stops.
though. Sorry, we can't come over for Thanksgiving. What, is Dad drunk again? Nope, he's playing Tetris.
No, really. I mean, we had to. All right, so
Did you have to have a Tetris intervention?
I don't even remember what happened.
Like, how did the batteries not die before the credits rolled? That's what I'm curious about.
The NES
No,
version.
this is what I'm telling you. The Game Boy No, this was the Game Boy version.
Really?
I'm telling you, the Game Boy had really good battery life. Trust me.
Okay. It
Listeners
actually
out
wasn't
there,
that terrible.
correct
But
us.
maybe I played it too much, so I had to replace the batteries all the time.
Huh.
I mean, it's
Or you
no
just bought
Xbox
crappy batteries.
controller. But
So he would sit on the couch and play that game until the credits rolled. And one day, Thanksgiving, he started playing it in the morning. And my mom was getting stuff ready because she had to bring a dish to my aunt and uncle's. And she got her dish ready. And he literally just would not put it down. So we couldn't leave. We ended up going. So I exaggerated. We ended up going, but we were like 3 hours late.
Wow.
And they've never let him live that down.
he does know that's the Game Boy is portable, right? Like, he could have taken it with
I
him.
know. But that's the thing. That's what I wanted to say is that, like, for the most part, he would just sit with the TV on. We would have the TV on and I'll be watching, like, UConn basketball or whatever we watched at the time. And then he would just sit on the couch playing Tetris while the TV was going. So it was like a precursor to what mobile gaming is now for kids. I don't think they play them on the road as often as they just play them sitting on the couch in front of the TV.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think that's ever changed.
Huh.
And that's how Tetris was for him.
You know, I read something interesting while kind of researching this, but apparently people did studies when Tetris came out and found that, and this is true, okay? They found that there was a situation where if people played too much Tetris, they would start hallucinating, and it's classified as a hallucination in medical terminology, but they would start seeing everything as Tetris. Like everything fitting in to blocks and into those geometric patterns.
A similar thing happened with The Witness recently.
Really?
People were just walking around. Yeah, it was a phenomenon after The Witness came out. People, I mean, it wasn't like a clinical study or anything, but after The Witness came out, people were constantly tweeting like pictures and Instagramming pictures of things that looked like they should be in The Witness. Just real life things.
Well, no, I mean like people would actually like think of real life, like things that did not look anything like blocks as blocks. Like there's a famous.
It's crazy.
I think there's a Simpsons scene where Homer is he's gone Tetris crazy, and he's like putting his family into the car and packing things in Tetris blocks. And it was like that, and it was medically classified as a thing. So,
Wow.
don't you play too much Tetris, otherwise you're gonna go Tetris crazy.
I certainly don't want to go Tetris crazy on this podcast, but I feel like we should probably talk about Tetris.
I mean, we have been talking about Tetris.
Haven't we?
Oh, right, okay.
Like that was part of that was part of Tetris Mania. Like,
I thought we were going Tetris crazy.
That comment kind of puzzles me.
oh gosh.
No,
I just want to say the lead up to this podcast has been so terrible with your puns, all of you. Just so many puns in our group chat.
I mean,
we
you're
had some
welcome.
good puns.
I mean, like, I enjoyed many of them, but guys, at a certain point, it's kind of you're fitting too many things in there.
Like we crossed the line.
Yep, it does
Okay.
feel that way.
Here's how ubiquitous Tetris is, though. Another Tetris antidote.
Anecdote.
Anecdote.
There you go.
Anecdote. We're not curing any diseases with Tetris, unfortunately.
Or are we?
Well, except for Tetris mania.
Tetrasitis.
But when I was in my early 20s, I picked up a part-time job working for FedEx. And hopefully they don't sue me for libel, but I was a truck filler, basically.
What does that mean?
My job was to stand at the end of the conveyor belt, take packages, and load them into the truck.
Okay.
A loader. My official title was loader. So I was a loader, and I remember distinctly my first day learning Tetris. Wow. Learning how to learning how to load the trucks and everything. And it's a very stressful job. Let me just say, those guys work hard, and it's hot and sweaty, and you load just so many packages and heavy packages. But anyway, they described it to me as Tetris.
Yeah. Because
you have to fit everything to the ceiling of the truck. Of these big FedEx trucks.
Yeah.
And in order to fit everything together, that's the analogy that they used to help us kind of figure out how you want to stack them all.
And then they walked away humming
Tetris.
the Tetris music, right?
Yes, they did. Do, 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 do.
I've heard the same thing happens at pharmacies, except at Dr. Mario. I mean... Oh my gosh, I got a laugh out of Jack. I did good.
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
It wasn't a pun.
A lot of people just don't think of Tetris much anymore because it is everywhere. Like, there is that ubiquity to it, so people are just kind of don't really give it as much credit, I guess, as other games.
I guess that's what I meant at the beginning when I said, like, do people really think about Tetris much?
Well, see, I don't think there are people who, like, it's just kind of become a staple.
Yeah.
Like, we don't think of bread very much. It's there in our stores, you know?
Yeah. And sliced bread, at one point, was a big deal.
Yeah.
There was a time when sliced bread was not even, you couldn't get that. I'm not joking.
Well,
I mean, seriously.
that's actually good. Tetris is sliced bread. Like, it came out and people were like, holy crap, this is amazing. It's unlike anything we've played before. Because honestly, before Tetris, I think Tetris is kind of the birth of puzzle games.
At least electronic puzzle games.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In video games. Like, it was based off of Tetranamos. I believe I pronounced that correctly.
Tetranamos.
Yes.
Which are kind of these puzzle games where you have to fit all these little puzzle pieces into a perfect rectangle in just the right way. It was Alexey
Pajitnov.
Oh God, thank you. I didn't want to try to say that name.
We are
I'm glad somebody
butchering
else
his
did.
name. I know it. I'm so sorry if he ever listens to this. But it was his favorite game growing up. And he decided one day while he was working at the Soviet Academy of Sciences to try and make it into a computer game. And he actually managed to do it on an Electronica 60 with the help of Vladamir Pokhilko?
Sure. Yep.
Pokhilko? I cannot pronounce Russian names.
This is terrible.
Names are the worst.
Yeah. But mad respect to those folks. Just because we can't say your name doesn't mean... No, seriously.
Yeah.
Not really.
That's why I rarely say Japanese names, because any names, honestly. But yeah, I always mess them up.
I think it's really interesting the journey that Tetris had in order to get made.
Yeah.
Because once it got made in Russia, this was during the Cold War. So the way of it becoming a global phenomenon was kind of very bizarre.
And he was working for the Russian government when he made it.
Right.
So they claimed ownership over it. And for a long time, he didn't make any money off of it.
Right.
Correct. And it was also the first Soviet-Russian game, well, I guess there wouldn't have been any before that, but that was ever actually imported to the United States.
Right.
Yep.
Or probably any other country for that matter. I mean, historically, it's highly important.
Yeah, and I mean, because of the way that everything was set up, he never owned the intellectual property rights to it until the fall of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was finally able to move over here in 1991, he was able to set up the Tetris company, which has since then kind of controlled the IP of Tetris.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's ever made another game.
He hasn't. I mean, not publicly anyway.
Yeah.
From what I researched.
Right.
I mean, he really isn't into games per se.
Right.
He's like a mathematician genius type guy, and he just, like Jack said, he was in love with Tentergnomes or whatever they're called, and made it. Yeah.
He was just messing around and wanted to make a digital version of his favorite game and did that.
Well, and you know, it's crazy because, like you said, I just want to emphasize how much of a genius he is. He's one of the guys who helped discover the nuclear winter. The whole theory that if enough atomic bombs go out, we're going to be plunged into a global ice age.
Which I firmly believe in, so yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's like he's just some scientist guy you've never heard of. He's contributed to some important ideas that you definitely have heard of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, fun fact, when Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, he was talking about putting that straight line down so that they could clear those 4 rows in Tetris.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, didn't the guy become fairly reclusive and he didn't want to talk about Tetris, didn't want anything to do with it, and, like, was there not, like, a signed copy of Tetris that he, like the only one he ever signed that sold for, like, $10 million? I mean, these are things I just heard, but I don't know that they're true. You know, did you guys see any of that when you were researching?
I don't think that... Everything I saw kind of made it sound like he's pretty chill about having never seen any royalties from his work. Like, for missing out on the time when Tetris was selling tens of millions of copies that would have made him utterly set for life. Everything I saw made it seem like he's just kind of humble about it and just doesn't really... Not that he doesn't care, but more that he's perfectly willing to talk about it. It's just not his major focus in life, you know?
Well, maybe when he made those comments I'm thinking of was still during the Cold War when Russia was completely Soviet, and no joke here, you know, where he probably did not feel comfortable talking about it at that point.
Yeah, it might not have been safe for him to talk about the ownership of his game.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lawsuit for a while.
Was there?
Yeah.
Well, I know since he formed the Tetris company that the Tetris company actively pursues lawsuits against anyone infringing on their rights.
No, I mean there was a lawsuit put on him from the Russian government.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like the post-Soviet Russian government?
I'm not sure when.
What was it for? Just the ownership of it?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
But the game itself, I don't feel like we've really talked about the mechanics of the game. It's so perfectly simple.
Yeah.
So explain the story to Tetris, Daniel.
Well, I mean, it's such a pure
there's
experience.
There's a block. There was a country boy, and he lived on this planet with his aunt and uncle, and he just dreamed of being a star block someday.
But seriously, it's literally pure gameplay mechanics, nothing else.
Right. Although there are some people who, you know, talk about the story of Tetris, and it's not necessarily a story, but instead it's more of a philosophical statement, wherein essentially it's kind of an existential dread. It's a game about existential crises, because all of the things that you are successful at, when you successfully fill in a line, it disappears. But all of your failures remain on screen and slowly build up until you lose. Or I guess until you see the credits, since Tetris has credits in the Game Boy version.
Yeah,
in the Game
I've
Boy
never seen
version.
them.
Anyway.
I suck at Tetris. I mean, full disclosure, but yeah.
It might have just been one of the modes in the Game Boy version, but yeah.
Well, that could be. Yeah. But I think it is interesting to think about games as maybe not straightforward stories, but as statements on on life and the universe and all that. Like, I'm sure maybe he didn't keep that in mind, but it is, I think it's a very beautiful game. Just based on the mechanics alone. They're so simple and straightforward and deep and satisfying all at the same time.
And it taps into that anxiety and human beings' desire to figure things out. And the way that, like you said, like, you take your problems and they just stack up and you have to manage them. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of, there's a sense of accomplishment when you're able to manage them. So when you get those 4 lines all together, oh my gosh, what a rush you get from that.
Yeah.
And that might sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. Like,
no, that's not easy to do.
No.
Well, and not only that, but another interpretation I've seen has been like order versus chaos, because you never know what's going to be coming up next, and you just kind of have to deal with what the game is throwing at you, and put whatever comes down in its proper place in order to keep playing. The player is an agent of order, and the game is throwing chaos at it. I don't know. I feel like
all those things make sense.
Yeah, like I feel like there's a lot of ways you can interpret the simple gameplay mechanics, and I think that's kind of what makes it so intense an experience. Like, when people play Tetris, they get really into Tetris. I guess you're either really into it or you're really just kind of like, oh, whatever. Like, there's not really an in-between level of commitment to Tetris.
I've heard about people getting so into Tetris that they miss Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, there are people that really dig it.
I know, right? Those crazy anti-Thanksgiving people.
The funny thing is...
with their Thanksgiving posters.
The funny thing is, the only other time...
Norman Rockwell represent.
Yeah.
The only other time we've had, like, a Thanksgiving fiasco was when my dad, me, my sister, and I think my sister's husband, maybe, were all playing Rock Band for, like, 6 hours straight, and my mom had to yell at us to come to dinner. Yeah. It was fun. Video games are fun on Thanksgiving. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it goes hand in hand with, like, turkey and football.
Yeah, right?
Hand and drumstick. Yeah.
Those are interesting ways to look at Tetris. I mean, I've never really looked at it beyond just the fact that it's a bunch of blocks falling down on the screen.
Well, you know, ever since I read that Missile Command was about the Cold War and, like, the worst case scenario of trying to defend cities against nuclear holocaust, I thought that was a really interesting and forward-thinking idea that a game that came out in the early 80s had and was able to convey effectively. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like people don't give older games enough credit. Like, they just say kind of simple graphics and the kind of straightforward gameplay mechanics, and they think, oh, it's just a thing.
Yeah, but they have to appreciate the time and surroundings in which it came out in. I mean, like, if this game had been released by some startup in Silicon Valley, I don't know that it would be the same, but the fact that it came out of Soviet Russia, I think, is kind of important.
I think it might have even been one of the first pieces of, like, media. Maybe, I know it was the first piece of software that came out of Russia and through the Iron Curtain, but might have been the first piece of media to come through, too. I'm not sure about that one, but...
It was among the first at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about an era during which, like, we couldn't find a Russian person to play the Russian guy on Star Trek. Like, we're talking about an era where it was a big deal that the Beatles went to Russia to play music.
Wait, when?
The Beatles weren't alive in the 80s. Or not together,
Well,
anyway.
I just mean, like...
Their last live performance was in 1965. Just saying.
I'm talking about the Cold War era in general. Like...
Yeah.
Even towards the end of the Cold War, it was really rare to see Russian stuff coming to the United States.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's strangely mesmerizing to even just to watch, and terribly engaging to play. Like, there's a reason this game is on the top of, like, there are a lot of places that put Tetris as one of the top games of all time over everything else.
And, like, not in 1999, like, recently.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't really even touched on some of the kind of spin-offs that have come from Tetris. One of the more interesting ones that I remember growing up was Tetris.
Well, I mean, I mentioned Dr. Mario.
Well, yeah, Dr. Mario. That's a game that's more like influenced by Tetris, and there's a lot of those, Luminous and Dr. Mario, and.
So, what do you mean by spin-offs then?
But like spin-offs, like other Tetris games, like there was Tetris 64 on the Nintendo 64. Did you guys ever play that? Have you seen it?
I have not.
It is a spherical version of Tetris.
What?
Yeah. It's like a sphere because they were obsessed with everything being 3D needlessly at the time. So
well, it's like what's going to happen with VR.
So it's like when you had to pop those bubbles in that one game?
No. It was
Bubble Buster? Is that what
No, there was a sphere that you
which means circle, right?
Yes, that you could circle the camera around as pieces would fall, and you had to find a place. It was basically like if a puzzle is a puzzle, and then a 3D puzzle is a 3D version of that. Tetris 64 was like the 3D puzzle version of Tetris, and it wasn't very good.
Which speaks to the greatness of Tetris itself. I mean,
yeah, it does, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to screw Tetris up, and we know that because
we've seen it time and time again.
Screwed up Tetris.
Right.
Like,
it's been done.
Have you guys seen the EA version of Tetris that's gone mobile right now?
No.
It has microtransactions in it.
My lord. What could you possibly buy in-app for Tetris?
I don't even remember, but I remember downloading it because I was like, oh, I want to play Tetris on my phone. And booting it up and just being inundated with, like, ads and, like, microtransactions. I was just like, I don't want any of this. I just want to play Tetris.
Yeah. There's an okay version of Tetris on the on the new gen consoles, I think. Ultimate Tetris.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay. It's not the pure perfect Tetris, but it's not bad. It's got Tetris.
I just don't know what else you could do with Tetris.
I mean,
and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You don't need to.
That's kind of it. It's all you really need to do with Tetris is to put it on every new thing that comes out.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be very expensive, just like a couple bucks, and people will buy it because Tetris is that much of a staple. One thing we haven't touched on was when the Soviet Union kind of started trying to sell the rights out to other developers outside of Russia, it led to a lot of confusion because the Soviet Union had never done something like that before. So for years, there were legal disputes over who had the right outside of Russia to make Tetris games. Probably most notably, the Soviet Union sold the rights to make arcade games and the rights to make home console versions to two different groups. And Atari ended up with like a sub-license from the person who owned the rights to arcades, but they thought that they owned the rights to it on home console, and Nintendo ended up with the rights to home console as well. And so for like 4 years, they kind of duked it out in court to see who would have kind of the supremacy, like who had the right to sell their Tetris game on home consoles. And so that was between Nintendo and Atari subsidiary Tengen. Ultimately, Nintendo won, and the court ordered that Tengen literally destroy every single existing copy that they had left. I mean, back in the day, Nintendo was a bunch of ruthless mofos.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I actually have some Tengen Nintendo NES cartridges, and they look nothing like Nintendo cartridges, and those were supposed to all be destroyed too.
yeah, I think there was something about Tengen cartridges that was...
Well, see, what Nintendo did was they charged
Right.
a shit ton of money for their cartridges.
Right.
And said you can only release your games on our cartridges.
On our cartridges.
Yeah, they were proprietary.
So people started just saying, screw that, we'll make our own. So they did, and Nintendo won that lawsuit too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like just a really weird legal and almost vicious part of the gaming industry's past that a lot of people don't know about. Just those early console days and the amount of backroom dealing that went on. You read a book about it, didn't you, Daniel? It was about like Sega and Sony.
Yeah,
the console wars touched on that a lot.
And even All Your Base Belonged to Us by Harold Goldberg.
I was just
going to
say
on that as well.
Harold Goldberg's
friend of the show.
Does a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what makes Tetris so universally appealing? Like, I've never met anyone who has said that they hate Tetris.
Because anybody can pick up and play it. And no, you can't just pick up and play it and excel at it. But anybody can pick up and play it and get the concept.
Yeah.
I think it's the simplicity, like you said. Like Jeremy just said. Like, anybody can pick it up and understand and play it. But I think if you are somebody who does not enjoy that kind of, like, stress and anxiety that Tetris can often cause, I can see why you wouldn't like it. But to me, and I'm going to show my cards here, but to me, Tetris is the best games, period. And to me, it's one of the greatest games ever created, not just video games. It transcends video games for me. It is timeless on the level of chess and checkers.
I would even go as far as backgammon.
Or backgammon.
You'd go all the way back to backgammon?
Don't you sleep on backgammon. Seriously. That game is great.
I think you're right. It might like lock in and scratch that same strategic, orderly itch that chess does. I remember reading that, and this was some time ago, so I can't like cite the study or anything, but that when people play Tetris, or at least, they don't go absolutely Tetris crazy and play it nonstop all the time, but when you play Tetris moderately, I heard that like it helps to increase brain function, and it in turn, it's almost like meditation. It helps order your thoughts.
Daniel said something about stress and anxiety that it causes people. I think for a large number of people, it also helps relieve some of that.
Yeah.
Right. It just depends on your
mentality, your personality, your style, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess I'm with Daniel. I certainly think it's the best games, period. It's available on any platform. It's cheap. It's innovative. It's historically insanely important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of how one would play devil's advocate and say no.
Well, I mean, I guess you could always say it's a pretty basic game where you just drop shapes and try to make a match, but
I mean, you can't, like, at the same time, we have so many examples of people failing to get that right.
Yeah.
You know?
And if the game released today, maybe that would be true, but this was at a time when, like, Simon was probably the mainstream puzzle game at that point. And that had 4 lights on it.
When did that come out?
Like 1976-ish?
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's like the Rubik's Cube of the electronic age.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Its legacy really speaks for itself. There's only so much that we can say for Tetris that more than any game that we've ever discussed and probably will ever discuss, it's just a game that as soon as you pick it up, you can understand its appeal and anybody can play it. So it's easier for somebody to actually just go play Tetris somehow in any number of forms than it is for us to really explain how great it is. It's easier for Tetris to just make its own case. So if you haven't played Tetris, like go try it out.
For like 10 minutes even. Like
Yeah. It's not going to hurt you.
So really what we're saying is after listening to us blabber on about it for an hour, you could have just been playing it and you would have had a better time.
No, I think our anecdotes were great. I loved learning that your father ruined Thanksgiving one year by playing too much Tetris. That was great.
Yeah.
Way to go, Greg.
Yeah.
He's going to love that you told that story, isn't he?
You see, Danny, I don't play games, but Tetris, there's just something about it.
Jack, did I tell you about when we went to Daniel's house, his parents' house, for his birthday?
No.
I was wearing this t-shirt that I got from T Fury.
Yeah.
And it was Tyrion Lannister in kind of dressed up like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish character, right?
Okay.
And the shirt said Fighting Imps. It says Fighting Imps.
All right.
It does.
So we're there for like 3 hours. And finally, Greg, Daniel's dad, comes up to me and he's like, "So, where are the Fighting Imps from?" And I'm like, well, it's not actually a team. It's kind of a mashup between Game of Thrones and the Fighting Irish. And he's like, "Man, I've been trying to figure out that since the time you walked in the door." I'm like, "Why didn't you just ask?"
He said you're a very nice guy.
Does he not watch Game of Thrones?
No, of course not. No.
All right.
It's way too violent for him. He's a Lord of the Rings person.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, the other cool thing that happened while we were there is somebody just started randomly playing the Lord of the Rings soundtrack because it was Daniel's birthday.
Aww.
So that was cool.
Yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait a second. Is Lord of the Rings soundtrack playing right
Well,
now?
I heard it a few minutes before that, but I didn't really want to say anything.
It's my dad. My dad
Yeah.
picked it. Yeah, that's what he does.
Wait.
He's weird.
I thought maybe somebody was watching the movie at first, but then it just kept playing.
No,
I'm like,
he just had it playing in the background.
Daniel, are you a
Yes.
big Lord of the Rings fan?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought, for some reason I thought you didn't like Lord of the Rings.
yeah,
I love Lord of the
that.
Rings. I don't like the Hobbit movies.
Not even the first one?
Daniel's a Tolkien
The first
nerd.
one's my favorite of the three.
Okay. That's fair enough.
Do we need to reiterate on whether or not we think this is the best games period, or
Yes.
are we?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I personally think it's one of the best games, period. I can't speak for you two, but you seem pretty on board with it.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it. Just do
Best
it.
game, period. Jeremy?
What? Best games period?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. As they say in
I'd be
Russia.
puzzled by anybody that said otherwise. I can only make that joke so many times in one podcast.
After
so
the show's over, I'm
we
gonna block
really
you.
need to wrap this up. Thank you. I need that. I crossed the line. I took a new angle, and I should have reversed.
You could flip it around on me.
Is it worth it? Let me work it. I'll put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it. Most people don't know that song's about Tetris.
We're coming to a close, so I'm just going to shout out to Extra Life. It's always a good time to sign up for Extra Life. I mean, this show's part of what we do for you guys, and head over to Extra Life, extra-life.org. You can sign up. It's really great. Play video games and raise money for sick kids in hospitals. How can you do better than that? Really.
Yeah.
Easiest sell in the world. This year, our event's coming up on November 5th. And really, the more people we get involved, the more money we can help raise. And 100% of that money goes to the kids in the hospitals. Each participant can choose which hospital their money goes to, so you know where it's going. You know what it's being used for. It's being used to help treat the kids directly, especially the kids whose families can't necessarily pay for their treatment. It is the best.
On that note, Jack, Jeremy,
Daniel.
I would like to thank you both for joining me on this adventure tonight. And thank you, good listeners, for joining us for episode 24 of the Best Games Period. If you like the show, please let us know and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and all that jazz. Make sure that everybody knows how awesome we are, because you know how awesome we are. That's why you listen, right? Yeah. You can follow us on Twitter at Best Games Period. Jack is at Riverboat Jack. Jeremy is at Mojo Monkey 12, and I am Indie Jones 84. That's at Indie Jones 84. You can also find the show on SoundCloud, Libsyn, iTunes, Game Informer, and as Jack mentioned, the Extra Life community website, community.extralife.org. You can also watch video versions of the episodes when they go up on YouTube, which personally is my favorite way to watch the show, consume the show anyway. Come back next week for what should be an interesting discussion, a debate, if you will, on Uncharted 2, Among Thieves, and Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. Which is the better game?
Neither.
Ah!
Wait, what?
No. Oh, man. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is going to be a heated episode. So, come back next week. After you've played Uncharted 4, you can listen to us debate on its predecessors and which one deserves to be a Best Games Period. Thanks for listening. See ya.